Executive Outlook. I'm Isha Taneja, your host, and today we are joined by Alexandre Horvath, Chief Information Security Officer and Data Protection Officer. We will explore how cybersecurity and data protection are evolving, why even small businesses can't afford to ignore them, and how AI is shaping the future of security and many more. Thank you so much for being here, Alexander.
Well, thank you for that short introduction. It's definitely a good topic to speak about. As you said, everybody's concerned. There are not just the big ones, it's also everybody, also the SMEs, because every company nowadays is actually an IT company, even if a couple of them that don't like that expression. But if we turn off basically the switch, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a cybersecurity attack. They're basically out of business. You're not want to go back towards your, I don't know, paperwork, because I think that you will get out of business anyhow, just because of availability. But yeah, it is definitely a topic which you have to look at, and well, I know some don't take it that seriously. But normally, when somebody gets hit, they would pay everything they could, but then obviously it's too late. So it's really important that you have a plan B and hopefully also a strategy how to include cybersecurity from the beginning. And yeah, well, let's talk about it because there are a couple of things which you can do, which I think also are not that expensive anymore or better manageable than the day prior the days. Because yes, a lot of things also changed. So we also used what you can towards well, the best way you can actually, and yeah, and go from there.
Perfect. I'm very excited to hear all the stories and implementation steps, step by step, how we can go through. Yeah. So let's start with your journey. You have an interesting journey in cybersecurity and also in the data protection. So, how did it begin and what led you into this space?
Well, I think I was always interested in IT, well, to begin with. Like typical, I guess, in the old days, you would say script kiddies or kiddies building hardware, new stuff. Also, first time you could also connect to the internet and so on. It went to, that was actually the approach basically. And then, yes, building smaller networks. And then obviously also had the chance to work in a bigger company, also build their network and to see how that works. Yeah, and then I saw at some point you also had to look at security because yeah, data was definitely also worth protecting, and I think that's how the whole thing came up. And then I also jumped into IT audit. So that's also a bit the part where you yeah, have to look how controls are working and that not companies are not just giving everything out of hand. So I think that was also a good starting point. From there, I moved on to more cybersecurity, and I think also data protection. Also now, I would even go further with artificial intelligence. Although those yeah, buzzwords, if you want to, are in line. So I mean, if I don't know what kind of data actually AI is actually looking at, then we're already talking about those three topics. So, but you can also look at well, individual. I mean, if you don't classify your data, then it's really hard to say if you have a breach, if something was actually stolen in a bad way, because maybe they only got well, kind of public data, and then it's anyhow not that bad. But obviously, if you don't have a classification, you don't even know if it's confidential or not. So yeah, that was also 20 years ago when I started. We always had problems actually to classify data. I think still nowadays, it's yeah, a lot of companies they don't properly do it, even if a lot of things improved. I mean, well, first of all, we have a lot of regulations, GDPR and so on, just to name some of them, which is good in my opinion. But I mean, you should, next to the classification, you should also know where your data is or lies. Is it in transfer? And if so, yeah, is it also end-to-end protected? So there are a lot of things you have to consider. And yeah, a lot of companies, they just want to do business and don't really look at data where it is and if it's really protected. That's a big issue. Yeah, but to come back, I mean, those kind of positions are actually coming together. I mean, if you're big enough, it's always good to have a proper cybersecurity department or a CISO department and the data protection department. But if not, you can obviously also do both of them because they're very close to each other. You know, both heads should know what the other one is doing. yeah, so that was actually the whole thing. How I guess how it started. So it came always more and more together, and I think also sometimes they also say this CISO is basically the one who is overlooking everything. Well, that's only true in for some part, or I mean, he's accountable. But yeah, you also have to obviously set up a nice governance as well, and tell everybody who is responsible for what. So normally, it's nice if you have a kind of a racy matrix where you also see who is actually who should talk to whom, and also who is responsible for what. So I think if you have all that set up, you can go from there. So that's basically I think where it started, but it took over, and it's obviously growing. The field is growing, and yeah, and I also went through a couple of different industries, which is interesting. I was always quite strong in the financial services, and even now I'm also working for Web3 blockchain cryptocurrency environment, where obviously you have to protect your data in a even bit different way, because if somebody actually has access to the wallet, he can directly make money out of it. If I steal data, I still have to sell it to somebody. But with cryptocurrency, I can directly just transfer it to your wallet, and I can make money out of it.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned is about the IT audits, right? So you were involved in certain IT audits.
Exactly.
Or for the organization to be IT audit ready, what should be the steps that the organization should do?
Well, it always depends what kind of audit it is. I mean, is it just the internal looking at the project, looking at the software? The basics are quite low to actually do an audit. But I mean, if you want to go for, let's say, also ISO certification audit, that needs a lot of preparation. Normally, well, it depends how big the company is, but I would say, well, yeah, 2 to 3 months preparation. Obviously, you have to get do a gap analysis. You have to check where you are. Then it depends what is missing. Let's say incident management is missing. It will take some time to set it up. If this is already there and you can just implement the cybersecurity part, then obviously it's faster. So that's difficult to say how long these things takes. You really have to look at it. But normally with the gap, starting with the gap analysis, that helps. But then you can go from there.
Small and mid side businesses, they still feel that we are too small to be a target. So why is that mindset dangerous today?
I have a good example. Let's say you want to attack a bigger bank with let's say 2,000 security employees. I wouldn't attack the bank if I know that they actually have let's say a water supplier which delivers them every month a couple of liters of water, and they actually well exchanging invoices by PDF email, yeah, then I attack that little water supplier because the security standards there are not that high. Yeah, I implement my malicious code to a PDF. I'm in the bank. I mean, I'm not just, well, this is an example which happened. So these are things which are, that's what I'm saying, always go for the weakest link. And even if I have a really strong security posture, I can just look at where is the weakest point, and that would be one. So that means that also as a small entity, I don't think you you look good if you say, well, that's not my fault that they entered. That was you also didn't really do your homework. So that's why it's really also interesting or important that they protect themselves.
I know you have just given one example that if invoices are being shared in the PDF formats, right? So, what is the best way to do it and to make ourselves cyber proof?
Well, if I knew that, I could write the book and then I could actually retire it, I guess. But there's obviously no holy grail, unfortunately. But the thing is, you really have to keep your cybersecurity on a high level. That's actually the main thing. Yeah, try to also implement, I don't know, a standard. You don't really have to go for the certification, but at least you have to have some standards in house. And if you use that, normally that's quite yeah. It's also adapting. So that's one good thing, and then you should have at least a baseline to, let's say, I wouldn't use the word survive, but at least you should yeah, at least you should, well, those the minor, or let's say the weaker attacks should all drop out, and even well, I mean, if I have time and also the budget, it will be hard to defend everything. But at least, as I said, you have the standard is higher than others, and I think as an attacker, you will just after a while say, okay, we drop it, we try to actually attack another one. So then you will basically, yeah. I'm just saying that at that level, you will be secure enough that they will actually attack a lower one, because the revenue is, or the chances to gain more benefit out of it is bigger, and that's how it normally works. But yeah, that's what I can actually recommend. So just try to use the standard, obviously also adapt to it. I mean, you cannot just lay back and once you have implemented it, but at least then you have a good baseline and you can go from there.
And what are your thoughts? What are the first cybersecurity foundations that a company should never ignore?
That's also depends a bit on how they're structured. I mean, if you're using cloud computing like most do nowadays, yeah, obviously set up a nice security posture around it. I mean, you can now also use a lot of automated stuff. Also use artificial intelligence so that the system is learning yeah, how people. I always call it kind of your profiling about your users. Basically, if you know that people are basically working every day in a similar way, I mean, just taking an example, somebody comes in and obviously is working on a couple of Microsoft Office tools, writing stuff, obviously also using emails, also using a couple of web browsers to browse the web. But that's basically the standard work. Maybe also accessing a ERP system and so on, just internal stuff. And then after a while, obviously, system should know, okay, that specific person is using that. And then if at one point that person is using, I don't know, was downloading a software and suddenly is using different stuff or even looking at actually also data, which they shouldn't or doesn't really make sense because it has nothing to do with their job, then obviously the system should notify somebody or even block that individual, or even worse. I mean, if that person is actually sending at 2 in the morning a 500 gigabyte towards Russia, and maybe somebody should block that. That's what I'm saying. So that those are the things which a system should learn and then automatically block. And yeah, if you're using cloud computing, there are tools which you can actually activate. You can also go that further to look at the IP addresses. So basically, if you're also using VPNs for people who are working from home, things should pop up. I mean, if somebody has an IP address, let's say in Germany, and half an hour later there's an IP address from Thailand, and this is not physically possible to be there. But then maybe well they're using VPN and they have a kind of a schedule which automatically changes the IP addresses, and then it makes sense. But I mean, maybe it was also a hacker who actually got the credentials and is now yeah in from Thailand. So those are things which you have to know.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. With AI coming into picture, a lot of people, organizations are moving towards the AI. So, how do you see AI changing cybersecurity, and what are the new risks that has been involved?
Well, I mean, there are always risks and chances. I think, obviously, on the one, I mean, if you mentioned the risk, obviously, that the attackers can obviously also use it. That makes well, their attacks are more sophisticated, or let's say also the whole phishing attacks are more sophisticated. And that means I can, if I want to generate any kind of information from somebody or a company, it's done in a couple of seconds. Or if I want to create, I don't know, a legit kind of yeah profile, that's also done in a very quick way. On the other hand, obviously you can also use AI to secure yourself, as I said before. So I mean, also use those kinds of tools. If you're using cloud, as I said, use also their. I mean, if you're very small, you can actually create kind of a AI SOC, basically internal, which is analyzing a lot of stuff. And again, AI will always be faster than if you even have 5,000 security specialists. And the same also with patterns, especially with patterns. I mean, if you have, as I said, once you do this kind of profiling or patterns checks, that's way faster than a human, because it's the same with if you have a skull, any kinds of tumors which a doctor is actually looking at. If they have to go through 4,000 different pictures, they will be slower than any AI, because it's way more precise. So same for security. But I mean, the only thing you have a good configuration, or at least if you don't want to do it internally, then give it to somebody, an external IT security operator who can actually configure that. And then I think that's what I'm saying. So you also use the tools you can add. And normally, if you have a cloud solution, those tools, yeah, are affordable or even included.
All right. Now, I want to ask that how the scammers can use your brand information, and what companies should do in order to protect their reputation and their customers.
One kind of buzzwords in that way is the digital brand protection, and saying that basically you have to secure your brands on the digital market or in the web. Meaning that, I mean, scammers normally try to either use your brand to set up well, a kind of fake offers so that people just are buying, obviously, well, think they're actually buying the right stuff, but obviously it's just a fake. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that they also want to even copy basically also maybe also your website. If you obviously have profiles for even using wallets, then even worse. So basically people are thinking they're actually well, because it looks one to one identical. They're on the right website. They didn't check really the URL, and yeah, and then things are going quite fast. And then I quickly get your credentials telling you that the server at the moment has a problem, and in the background I'm already logging in your name and draining basically your bank or your. So that means you also have to kind of make some awareness campaigns also for customers in that way because yeah, at the end they will always blame you even if they did the mistake, but you also have to show them their responsibilities and what can happen if they don't. They should always come back and think before click or think before do a transaction. So that's really important. So you really have also to, well, yeah, talk to your customers. I think more and more, involve them, and I think that will also give you a good reputation as well. That's the one thing I would also look at.